Thank you for coming. I believe that the smart cities topic is extremely interesting. So let's start. By 2015, nearly 70% of entire population, over 9 billion people, will live in urban areas. The main challenge for Poland won't be to supply this population with basic resources such as healthy food, water, and electricity. The main challenge in Poland would be to increase the quality of life and to provide better services for citizens. That's why I believe our discussion should focus on such topics as new urbanization, transport, quality of life, placemaking, and technology as well. Joachim, as an architect, could you please tell us something more about new urbanism and what's going to be the impact on the quality of life?
Hello? Yeah. Most of the projects we are involved with, and we work as Goettsch partners globally in many different parts of the world. We're fortunate to do a project in Warsaw too with Czarek and Golub GetHouse. But most places we work are urban centers, metropolitan areas of a dense population, and we see this idea of new urbanism, or the ideas of what was born maybe in the 80s or 90s as an idea to create environments like in cities, walkable environments that support all kinds of different programmatic aspects, from living to working to all different parts supporting a lifestyle within a city that you can approach, not necessarily with going by car from far away to different places. So we see that happening anywhere in Poland and Warsaw. I think the area where we're involved with Golub GetHouse building the Menica Legacy Tower is a fastly transforming part of the city that is not just having office development, it's having housing, shops, residential, retail, all kinds of elements that's really transforming the city. So we see that in Europe, in Chicago especially, there's a big movement of people moving back into the urban cores, living there. I think we see that building new buildings as well as transforming existing structures as transformation and revitalization. So it's really a big part of making cities better, smarter, and kind of more livable for the people.
Thank you. I believe that this new city center of Łódź will be a great example of new urbanism, new walkable area. Błażej, could you tell us something more about the role of EC1 in this new city center of Łódź?
Yes, hello. So I think that looking into the past, we can say that EC1 was a kind of trailblazer for the whole idea of the new center of Łódź. So the whole concept of revitalizing this part of town came after the decision about revitalization of the power plant came into place. So it was like a starting point, and then it opened a discussion within the city about the whole area. So not only the EC1, which is a beautiful old building, and the city was able to find resources and funds to revitalize this place and give it totally new functions, a cultural and educational one. But it has opened a debate about how this whole area should look like. And the whole process started in 2008. So the first idea of revitalizing the power plant and revitalizing the city center, creating a kind of new district. And 9 years later, we are sitting in a building which is totally revitalized with new functions, and we have new train station, and we have a lot of commercial buildings. which are prepared for people, and also the whole idea of revitalizing the city center, which is like a flagship program of the current mayor, is also a big thing for our city, and the biggest revitalization program not only in the history of this city but also one of the biggest one in Poland right now. So a lot of experiences, but answering your question, I think the EC1 was like a trailblazer for the whole process, and right now we hope that this building can be a kind of symbol for the city, a symbol of revitalization, taking care of the heritage, industrial heritage of the city, and showing to all the people in the country and abroad that very interesting projects can be made in this city.
Thank you. Smart buildings are definitely part of smart cities. What buildings developed by Golub GetHouse may offer in terms of sustainability and new technology to the end users for us?
So we're currently building a big building in Warsaw, downtown Warsaw, called Manica Legacy Tower, designed by Goettsch. It's a complex of two buildings, 65,000 GLA altogether in a low rise and a tower. And I guess when we were thinking about designing this, the idea was actually simple. When you think about this whole idea of smart cities and smart buildings, it's sort of obvious, right? Because we spend like probably 70% of our life working, and depending on jobs, probably the 70% in buildings, right? So when you think about it, you really want to do something for these people living, actually working or living, or whatever you call it. So when we were designing this, we said, okay, we need to do two things, right? To make this building very attractive for tenants, but especially for their employees. So we designed it two major things. One is that basically we designed a full set of amenities which make this attractive and make the work-life balance for the people better. So we designed a big plaza in front of a building, which is 4,500 square meters big, which has fountains, sculptures, seating place, where people can actually have some breathing space, right? When you think about the density of cities, maybe not yet in Warsaw, but in other parts of the world, it's getting dense and dense. So you really want to make, when you design it, you want to make some breathing space for the people. So the big plaza in front was the first one. Then we thought about, okay, let's actually design the whole podium of the building with amenities. So we have a big cafeteria on the ground floor, then we have two levels of fitness center, then we have a conference center, a big one, which can help people, to interact with their employers. Then another part of thinking was, okay, let's make terraces. People like to spend time outside and actually, on higher levels. So we have two big terraces where people can go out, eat, meet, sit down, enjoy, and we also took away part of floor plates on that floors and design cafeteria, so people can prepare their food, buy some soda, buy some drinks. Then another thing was there's things when you think about downtown cities, people bike a lot, right? Everybody is right now. This is very trendy, and it's actually good because it's a healthy living. So we designed the full amenity for bikers, 300 bikes where we can store with locker rooms, with showers, and basically amenity that people can bike, dress, change clothes, and go to work. And then another meeting place and a couple of other things. But this is things that make people living, what we call living and working in the building, more attractive and comfortable. That's the one thing. A second thing, we are surrounded by technology, and when you mentioned, smart buildings, also about smart technologies. So we try to, and we will implement in Manica Legacy Tower the newest mobile technologies, which basically can allow employees to interact with the building on a smart level. People will be able to go into the building, enter the building, go through the turnstiles, call the elevator, go to the office, open the doors with a smartphone, and then sit down in their room or in the office space and navigate the HVAC, heating, lighting, blinds. So basically adjust their comfort environment in their working space according to their preset requirements through the mobile technology, right? And then they would be able to, order food, get the laundry done, things like this. So, it's actually, the idea is not that new. It's more like making it happening, right? Because these technologies exist all around us, and we all use smartphones, but the effort is actually to get it implemented and make the building very, very attractive for the people.
So people's expectations are changing very rapidly. Krzysztof, from the occupier perspective, because you work closely with corporates looking for offices in Polish city, what smart solutions are the most sought after, and what companies are taking into account when selecting a city?
So it's actually very important for most of our clients, and there are two main areas. First of all, it's about the infrastructure. So how convenient it is to get to the office. And it's related to bicycle paths, the infrastructure in the building, which can support bikers. The same relates to public transport, like, trams, buses, trains, how to get to the building by car, how smart and flexible is parking facility in the building and in the whole neighborhood. What is also interesting, and currently tenants are looking how functions are allocated within the whole neighborhood. So this, let's say, main second area is about the environment around the building and whether we encourage people to interact. So it's not only about the building itself and how smart is the workplace, which I believe is another panel about that, but it's whether this building has some public areas. Is it open for people from outside? Is there any, let's say, green area or breathing area in front of the building, or is the patio supported with additional functions? But it's also related to what cities are doing with master planning. We observe that tenants are now looking more for kind of a different lifestyle where people can interact in a more flexible way during the day, going to some restaurants, cafes, going for a walk together. The question is whether they have choice, and whether the master plan is also smart enough to support that. So we've observed some big challenges, especially in Warsaw, where it was kind of a copy-paste of a city approach from London. So we have like monocultural function with mostly office space, and which created a lot of infrastructure challenges, and the area became pretty dead after hours. So now, thanks to, let's say, the fact that Poland is still very undeveloped, we have a chance to learn from this lesson. So what is, for example, happening in Łódź now, in the new center of Łódź, where it's not only about office space, it's not only about retail, it's also about residential, and what kind of synergy we can expect. And tenants are, becoming more and more smart, if we can say so, and they analyze a lot of long-term implications when they choose the location, when they choose the city. With new generations coming into the market, they also have slightly different approach. And some time ago I had a chance to attend a panel about public areas, and whether in time of new technology, people communicating through mobile phones, through the internet, whether there's still room for a bit more personal touch and personal contact between people, and whether when you plan cities, you can impact the interaction and encourage people to meet up and collaborate more often. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Some developers say that they are not creating buildings, they are creating places right now. So placemaking is definitely a part of smart cities. What is EC1 experience in this respect in terms of placemaking?
So our main goal, our main idea, since we started to work on this project, was to have a place where you can spend your time in a smart way. So you are not wasting your time. It's not for just pure entertainment, but you leave this place with knowledge, with new skills, with new ideas, and with new dreams. So maybe not everybody knows, but the EC1 is right now one of the biggest cultural undertaking right now in Poland, with 3 cultural centers, which we are preparing to open in the place where you are here and where the conference is. So in the EC1 East, together with the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, we plan to open the National Center for Film Culture, which will be the Museum of Polish Cinematography. In the western part of the complex, in December, we are opening the Center for Science and Technique with the whole industrial heritage of the energy path from the 19th century. And in the southern part of the complex, we plan to open the Center for Comic Books. And it altogether 4 hectares, 40,000 square meters, almost 10,000 square meters of exhibition space, and we hope it will be one of the biggest and most attractive cultural place, educational place to people in this country. So we hope we'll play a vital role in the whole process of recreating the city center and the whole city. And the program which we are planning to have is using a lot of also new technologies, interactive exhibitions, and so we hope our role will be very important.
Thank you. Also, green areas are becoming even more important than today. According to the research done by JLL and Skanska, it seems that greenery and green areas are one of the key factors improving productivity. And how green spaces will be integrated into urban landscapes, and how to measure the success of developing green areas within the cities. Joachim, could you please comment on this?
So we see that very, like you said, very common in many of the projects we do. We have a big amount of the ground plane, and sometimes it's part, as Czarek was alluding to, in the building, being taken over by plazas and basically public spaces that become breakout spaces for what happens to be office places become denser and denser. So people need to have areas where they can interact with the surrounding city, breakout spaces, and so on. So we see all kinds of different elements happening, but in different parts in the world, in many of the projects, it's happening. We just finished a project in Chicago where a 2-acre site is basically only occupied, 25% is occupied by enclosed space. Everything else is given over to the public and becomes an amenity for the users of the building, but also becomes an amenity to the city as the surrounding neighbors can participate and meander through the space and so on. The same thing happening in Warsaw as a development we're doing with or Golub GetHouse is doing there. It's a very big part of the development is public space that connects this development to the rest of the city, makes it inviting and interesting, and offers amenities to, like I said, the users of the building and the surrounding neighbors. But sometimes we also integrate the green spaces into the buildings as with terraces, interior offices that have breakout spaces that are green, and so on. So it's a very important aspect of architecture and urban development today.
Thank you. And Krzysztof, how cooperation between cities and developers should look like in creation of these public spaces? Who should be responsible for creation of public areas?
So We've seen a couple of models. I think what is really important is the real dialogue right from the beginning. What we observed in some other cases when cities organizing kind of a prize for architects for developing let's say the basis for the master planning, but sometimes it's completely disconnected from commercial part. Yes. So what is really important is we would encourage cities to invite developers and, let's say, well-respected and experienced advisors right from the beginning to, first of all, interact in terms of what are the implications of particular decisions and whether that makes sense from business perspective. Because currently, commercial environment is becoming more and more competitive. There are more developers, more players, more projects happening. It's not always followed by increasing demand. So that creates some challenges from developer's perspective, and you also need to finance the project to make it sensible. So from one hand, I believe it's always a win-win, because if we plan something which makes sense from commercial perspective, makes sense from, let's say, citizen perspective, so whether it's an end user, whether it's a tourist, it doesn't really matter. It's about citizens, it's about people who will be using the public areas, who will be using amenities around. Everyone wins then. So it's not about some kind of ping pong between developers and cities, because I believe it's a win-win. So sadly, I've seen maybe 2 examples of that so far, where the master planning was consulted with the, let's say, commercial part of the business. It was consulted with a lot of other institutions, some societies, etc., but not necessarily with developers, not necessarily with advisors, which I think is really lacking in Poland. I think mainly due to political reasons, but it is improving. So I think we see some potential.
New center of Łódź master plan was consulted with the business sector.
It's one of these 2 examples, by the way.
I actually agree very much with Krzysztof, what Krzysztof said, because the role of a city authorities should be really strengthened, and should be really not maybe decisive, but should be really very much interactive with us developers, how they plan the cities, right? Because truly what is happening is, and let's take Warsaw and Wola example, right, which is redeveloping itself from this past industrial functions due to the subway, right, and you've got a lot of office development, and you've got a lot of residential development. And luckily enough, it's actually being balanced, right? So you've got office development, but you also have a residential development. And this area ultimately will be very, very friendly. But it's not actually the function of how it was master planned. It's actually a function of the market, right? Because there's, commercial development, there's a little bit, of, let's say, not to mention oversupply of the office, or, big projects. So the developers turn into residential, right, buildings. Because in all this area, you could definitely do both things at the same time. In all these plots which you see, on Wola, you could do either commercial or residential, right? So it's left to the market, to actually decide what is beneficial and what is commercially viable right now to do. We're building office there right now, but we also have a site to the big residential project in Wola as well, right? So we're playing the market. But if it would be actually for the entire population more beneficial if a city would sit down with us and said, okay, guys, so this is the great area. We're going to master plan it. It has to have both commercial and residential functions, because otherwise it's going to be dead after the working hours. Where do you see the potential, plots being developed and how develop? And this dialogue would be very beneficial. I don't think this dialogue exists. It's not, and a lot of this is kind of anxiety between the local authorities and the developers to talk to each other. In Chicago, where Joachim is designing, is actually obvious. Where the developer is going to the city, and is saying, okay, I have this plot, I want to buy it, or I'm owning this, I want to do this and this. How can you improve me, the development side? How can you improve me the master planning? How can you make it even more beneficial to me so I can develop something nice and make money on this? So this dialogue should really exist.
So in Poland, the bigger cities, the bigger challenges with this dialogue. And with respect to Wola district in Warsaw, I think we are lucky that most of developers already learned the lesson. If Wola would start upcoming 10 years back, probably it would be a terrible area. So
fully agree.
We agree.
Definitely. Can you see any other barriers in developing of smart cities than the cooperation between private and public sector?
Well, I think it's very important. I think there's a balance in between, for instance, in Chicago in the U.S., it's really driven by the development, like Czarek said. Here, everything is underlined by a master plan. So really it has to be an in-between between the planning and the development to have this discourse to develop functioning cities that makes the next step and support the influx back into the cities, make it livable and as such also sustainable.
I can tell from our experience that before we started to work on a master plan, which in Polish law is like a special plan, we did a huge economic analysis regarding the market expectations, the economic potential of the city. So it was not only the discussion on the urban ideas and different kind of expectations, but it has to, through all the process, we knew that it needs to be based in solid economic reality. And I can tell you that it caused at the beginning a lot of problems, because you need to put at one table people who to some extent speak different languages. And the facilitation of this process took us almost 3 years to get to some kind of consensus between the urban perspective, the urban planner's perspective, the business perspective, the citizens' perspective. So it was a huge, let's say, political dialogue. But thanks to that new center, of which is growing right now with the support of the public opinion, which is, as you know, not a very common thing.
So smart cities seems not only to be a buzzword. The change is happening right now, and the expectations are changing and are pretty high. In smart cities, digital technologies plus planning will translate into better services for citizens. That's pretty obvious. And architects, developers, and also advisors are aware of this fact. Right now it is time for cities to get more involved into these initiatives, because we have to remember that the future is today and tomorrow is now. Thank you very much.